Joe Buzzard to the distributor of almost every significant label.
Right.
Pretty amazing.
Good. Okay.
We also, by the way, at that time traded with one of the major retailers, where they wanted some of our product, and we would trade them for Elektra, in particular, things like the Dillards, and later on, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? So we would have that as we went around to festivals and for our mail order.
How many copies could you get? I mean, it seems like it would be a limited number of copies if you're just trading with a retailer, but maybe you didn't need that many.
Yeah, I mean, it depended. They might want quite a few, and if they wanted, if they wanted the Kottke record, I mean, that's
right.
And the other thing that opened up, I don't know if this is probably significant too, that when we were first turned down with our 2 records by the stores, they told us to get a distributor.
Right.
And we went to Riverboat, who wasn't interested.
Right.
And then we decided to contact other labels, and the label that got us into the Harvard Coupe was Old Oblivion.
Okay.
Which had a Leo Kottke record, which I gather later on I think was probably a bootleg.
Okay. And you've told me this before, I think they were a record company.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist any longer.
Right.
But they were also distributing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, then what? Okay, you said Riverboat turned you down. The label that got you into the stores was Old Oblivion.
Riverboat was a distributorship.
Right. Yes.
So when that didn't happen, we wrote letters to a number of labels, including American Heritage and Old Oblivion, and
asking them what, to distribute them?
Saying that we're a distributor in the Boston area.
I see.
Could we carry your lot?
Got it. Oh, I see. Okay. And the first one.
When we got Old Oblivion and it had that Leo Kottke record, the Harvard Coupe signed us on as a distributor.
And took the Pegram and Spark Gap records.
Yeah, and whatever else we had by that
at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I had thought Riverboat had taken you on, and I had gotten that information somehow with 25 copies or something, but that's a no.
No, that's another distributor.
Okay. Jack's Record Seller took 25 copies or some such thing? Okay. So Riverboat did not distribute you at all, at least in the earliest years?
Right.
Until you started swapping with them later on?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
I don't even know if they took Rounder at that time.
Okay. And this would be the kind of thing, when I send you this latest deal, I mean, I'm going to revise everything I sent you previously, but when I send you this latest deal, the whole same thing applies. Everything that's in it is something that I have learned. It just doesn't mean that it's right.
Right.
You're going to need to look through that.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting when in the Danny Wilson is that, and even Cornrich, that Marion Bill and I didn't have the same recollections.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there were things that, where Mary and I were together that, we talk about that she totally forgot, and there are things that she mentions that I've totally forgotten.
Well, you haven't told me.
Other memories are really vivid.
You haven't talked much about him today, I'd have to say. I don't know what these all would be. I haven't heard much about him, except, but I don't want to go in great detail. The big story for Bill Cornrich, because he felt it was the motivation for his departure, was Danny Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to loom large in his memory, which gives it some believability, because I never got the feeling he was attempting to slander Rounder or say, aha, now I get the... in fact, he mentioned it kind of offhandedly, and I said, who's Danny Wilson? Now, I talked to Mark at great length at that time, but I talked to Mark about music,
And then he never mentioned that his brother worked for us.
Never said a word about it. So Cornrich mentioned very offhandedly that, well, the whole Danny Wilson thing soured me, and I said, what are you talking about? Who's Danny Wilson? And he laughed, and he said, I remember this very vividly. He said, I'm paraphrasing him, it's not an exact quote, but the paraphrase is completely in context. He said, oh, it doesn't surprise me that they didn't tell you about Danny Wilson. Let me tell you about Danny Wilson. So, but you have to see, coming from me, it lends, he believes very deeply, and I think truly, that Rounder shafted Danny Wilson. Now, Danny Wilson doesn't believe it so truly, so I have to sort this through. Although Danny thinks, as I said, I think Danny's take is that they wanted me out of there. I just didn't care. Bill is thinking that I was more dismayed about it than I was. Than I was. But
I mean, it's interesting. I think we all remember Danny and all remember, I think, liking him.
Right.
But he's barely a footnote.
Bill's take is simply that Danny was making a lot of money as a rounder mail order. Both Bill and Danny are in agreement that Danny's financial arrangement was not a salary. He was fundamentally buying product from you. I mean, I don't know that anybody thought about it in these terms, because I gathered it, but fundamentally he was buying product from you, selling it through mail orders that were coming in, and putting the markup in his pocket under an agreement that everybody just kind of acquiesced to.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was engaged in his private capitalist endeavor out of Willow Avenue until he left. I think he left before he stopped doing it. He physically moved his operation somewhere else. I think he told me. I'd have to look back. But basically, he was retailing your stuff to mail order customers, and the story comes down that you guys looked at his profit margins and said, well,
how did we do this?
Yeah, why is Danny Wilson doing this? Yeah. Why aren't we doing this? And it's an inherently believable story, particularly as a company grows. And I think the only point of divergence becomes how was Danny Wilson handled, and how did he feel about it?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm working with the two of them on. Bill Cornrich, though, clearly and believably thinks that Danny was ruthlessly tossed over the side by self-styled collectivists who wanted his money. Or wanted the money. I don't say wanted his money. You wanted to do it yourselves. You didn't want to steal his money, but you wanted to turn to it yourself and take it on. And I don't know. I'm trying to piece it together. To me, I see it as
you were aware that we were selling stuff by mail order beforehand.
I know that, and and I've spelled that out. Yeah. And I've talked about that with Bill Nowlin. Yeah. And no, absolutely. I mean, Bill Cornrich started out telling me that as far as he knew or could tell.
Mike, could you do me a favor and call back in 5 minutes?
Sure thing. Okay.
Donna has to check out a customer, and the credit card can't go through if we're on this line.
Not a problem. Hold on.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. I don't know if we were going on about Danny Wilson. I don't want to go on forever about
No, I mean,
that.
I think it's, for us, I think it's interesting that none of us even brought him up, or even, in my case, even thought about him in terms of what, when we were discussing history.
Right.
It's such a minor footnote.
It's a story that I put in what Bill told me. It's a story simply emblematic of growing, of a business growing, coming into itself, as he told it. This business of somebody else is even taking away the trappings of of tossing a guy out who didn't want to be out. If you just limit it to, well, we had this guy in the house and he was just buying our stuff and selling it and pocketing the difference, and then we said that's another avenue that we could take. Why are we outsourcing this? And I mean that in a benign way. Let's do it ourselves. Just even put in that light, it's just a story of a business kind of coming into its own and getting more business-like.
Yeah. One thing that I should mention then in terms of that is that when we started out distributing, we were so afraid of getting in debt that we would pay up front for all the product we were distributing.
Right.
Whether we got a lower price or not.
Oh, okay.
Later on, we found out that that some companies give a discount
for cash.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
For paying up front.
Right. Okay.
And that was never even a consideration for us.
Oh, so you didn't get the discount, or you did you get the discount?
People were giving. I think probably when some people started giving the discount, then we thought, But I mean, it was more a matter of just not wanting to owe anybody any money.
Okay. When did you abandon that bit of?
Probably have to talk to Bill, but I think it's when when it was the same thing with loans. We didn't have any loans.
Right. Okay.
It was part of that same thing of not wanting to owe anybody any money, and I think at some point, somebody pointed out that that we could be using this money in ways to bring in more money.
Right. Okay.
Than what we'd be paying if we were paying some interest.
Right. Let's move into. I want to talk more about the way you work nowadays, and why that is necessary. We've talked some kind of loosely about just changes in the superstructure of the music industry as a whole, and I think I mentioned to you in an email. I tried to summarize a lot of that in my narrative. But the question I asked Bill, and you said in your email response to me that this might be difficult to focus on, but I'm very curious about how a universal disc is handled differently from a round or select disc. If you put them out at the same time, what tangibly is going to happen to the one as opposed to the other that makes the distinction, that gives the distinction, allows the distinction to make sense?
Well, the current dividing line, I believe, is that Universal doesn't want to take in titles that they're not going to be able to ship 7,500 pieces.
Okay.
And that's, I don't think... No, I kept talking after you were obviously gone.
The last thing I got was, I think that was me hitting the button with my ear. I'm not sure. I heard a little beep and it was gone. Anyway, Universal doesn't want to take something if they can't ship 7,500 pieces. That's the last thing I got.
Right.
No reasoning. Go ahead.
And that we want them to feel good about what they're doing because they do seem to be able to put out more pieces into the marketplace as well as following up, and they seem to have a stronger ability to replenish and restock. That they're the best distribution company in terms of this. The sales force is really top notch, and we want to keep them energized and excited, and so we try to stick within their guidelines. Although it's interesting because they do have. Are you getting some static?
Yeah.
Let me see if that's. I didn't move at all, but it didn't think we had that before.
No, we didn't. It was fairly minor. You might have heard it louder than I did. I'm not right now. Oh, a little bit there.
Yeah, it's pretty loud right now here. You think you're okay?
Probably, yeah. I'm hearing your voice clearly. The static is sort of background stuff.
What I was starting to say is they do handle the largest classical labels, DGG, Philips, London, and certainly those are not going to be shipping 7,500 pieces.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But they probably also aren't putting out as many releases as we do. So
okay.
That might be part of that.
Distributor does all the marketing to the stores?
Pardon?
This distributor does all the marketing to the stores? They are the contact with stores, not you, period.
Well, we have their sales force goes in.
Right, okay.
But we do the marketing. We also, I think we may be the only... do you want to try calling back?
Yeah, that static is pretty heavy now.
Hang
on a second. Let me give it a try.
Yep. With the slight difference that the expectation of sales might... well, I wonder if I should just go downstairs and go back to the original phone.
Okay, why don't we get off?
Sorry about this. And I don't even know it's our phone because it didn't seem to be happening until we hung up before.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got this tape plugged in, so I don't want to leave this handset, this base that I'm at.
Yeah.
Because I've got my whole apparatus plugged into it.
Well, this is definitely getting bad.
Okay, let's try again. I might move as well. I can reorient this stuff, I suppose. All right.
Okay, well,
I'll call you back as soon as I'm set up.
Okay.
A few minutes. Bye. Yeah, it does for the moment. Okay, back on. All right. Balfa and Charivari.
Let's see. First, you'd have the expectation that if Balfa was going through UMG, that we would be selling and shipping more.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, that decision had already been
That's
made.
me. Yeah. Okay.
In terms of mailings, radio, press, those would all be the same except for any differences in their touring. So that if Alpha Toujours was touring more or Charivari were touring more, then they would get... there'd be more likely that we'd be able to set up interviews and for either press or radio.
In either case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it would depend more on the touring. The likelihood in this case would be that we would have thought that Alpha Toujours would be touring more if we had put them with UMG at the time.
Okay.
Beyond that, I think that, let's see, in terms of press and radio, they'd be the same. In terms of advertising, in that case, they'd probably be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt that there would be loads of additional. I think you'd have the usual, the sing-outs, the dirty linens,
right.
Any place that made sense would be, they'd actually be treated the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more in terms of how many get put in the marketplace and what the expectations are, but I don't think that they're treated very differently at Rounder.
Who does your non-UMG distribution?
IND and Bayside.
Okay, is IND stand for something?
I'm sure.
Okay. Those are initials, IND.
Yeah, I think so. It's what used to be what you call it, the One Stop in Connecticut. They used to be the second biggest One Stop next to Valley, and now they're the biggest.
Okay. Would you see the professionalism there that you would see with Universal? I don't want you to slam it. You're probably not going to want to defame your distributor, but you know what I'm getting at.
So as the biggest, I mean, obviously, Universal is still considered the strongest distributor in the country.
Right.
So I would say that they are better in some ways. Otherwise, the others would be considered the top. We're not seeing as many sales out, but we don't. There isn't. We're at a crossroads where we're not putting the same record out through both channels at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very hard to see. I mean, we certainly did well on the Big Alison Krauss record.
Right.
Which went out through independent distribution.
The live?
No, the compilation.
Oh, the compilation from '95. Right. Okay.
The Ricky Skaggs. I'm having a blank, but the Ricky Skaggs record that sold the most of any that he's put out recently since he turned to Bluegrass Rules.
Bluegrass Rules, yeah.
Went out through independent distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they can sell a lot, and you also if something does well, you run into the possibility of being the big fish in the small pond.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we had the same Ricky Skaggs going through Universal, I don't know if it would have gotten the same attention at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to tell because there isn't a as good an example as we'd like, because we would be feeling that we might be restricting one if we took a record that we felt should get a heavier push and experimenting and putting it through the independent distributors.
Why don't we hit this way? What is a distributor going to do? What does a distributor do? You suggested to me that Rounder does some of those same functions itself in terms of contacting.
Well, I think the functions have probably changed over the years.
Okay.
I think that in the past we were not in touch with retailers. I mean, in the past when we were talking about the early days,
mm-hmm.
There weren't national distributors.
Right. Uh-huh.
Even when we started out, even quite a while after we started out, A&M was still going through independent distribution. I think that MCA was, Motown was, and that, I think when Stanley Lewis went out of business, I think is when they lost a couple of, what are now considered major labels.
Mm-hmm.
When they left independent distribution and went through branch distribution.
Right.
But during that whole time, we did not have a size staff that could be contacting the retailers directly.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, we often had people from the distributorship going to shows, which still happens
mm-hmm.
Quite a bit. And I mean, basically what they're doing is soliciting the titles to the stores, shipping them,
mm-hmm.
In some places, in many cases, providing them with store play copies,
right.
And then taking the reorders and fulfilling them.
Do they actually press discs or whatever you do to make discs? Do they deal with manufacturing on their own, or do they come back to you for that?
Well, the titles that go through UMG does manufacture.
Okay.
The ones that don't go through UMG, we manufacture elsewhere.
Okay. Can UMG be? Are they effective with a release that may need some unique target marketing? Maybe a Balf is a good example. I assume that sells better and certainly sells better in some places than others.
Well, they would still be soliciting the same accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact figures. You probably have run across it, but it's something like 90% of the records are sold in 11 accounts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
So those all the distributors are selling to those same 11 accounts.
Okay.
And probably neither distributor is selling to Floyd's.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we still do sell to Floyd's.
How do you do that?
Directly. We just we have first of all, a lot of those titles don't go through UMG, but even then we have an agreement if they're not selling to certain accounts that we can.
Okay. And do you put things with county sales yourself and things like that? Okay. Okay. All right. When you started this back when Universal, I guess, was Mercury, I guess that's fair to say, back in '98, it had a promotion component for selected releases, and I gather that never went anywhere, really. In terms of, I remember Heather Miles was one of the earliest things that was going to be a joint promotional effort.
Right, and Allison and.
Well, it even reached Beau Jacques, I think, initially. It was at least in the group. I don't know if it was ever affected.
Well, I don't think that there's been a lot of positive effect from the promotion staff there,
mm-hmm.
but I think that's probably as much a statement about the state of radio today.
Mm-hmm.
than it is any efforts on their part.
No, elaborate a bit. I think I know where you're going.
If Mercury put out Heather Miles,
mm-hmm.
do you think it would get airplay?
Right, I understand. Okay.
They put out Elizabeth Cook, who was
right.
Younger and very attractive,
yeah.
and too country for country.
Right, and now I see she's just done a self-release.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if you put out music that's peripheral to the existing formats,
mm-hmm.
you're going to have an uphill battle no matter what label you are.
Okay. Is joint promotion even a formal part of the current UMG deal at all? Is that even discussed to any degree?
I think it exists as a possibility.
Okay.
If we have the appropriate projects,
mm-hmm.
and at that point discussions are held, and then if it seems like something might work, then we have to try to fit something into their schedule.
Has anything happened along those lines?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and do you have any plans like that for the upcoming Allison? That's about to hit the street, isn't it, or has?
Another month.
Okay, any plans along those lines, or is Rounder going to... I assume it's going through Universal, but is Rounder going to handle promotion totally on its own?
I think that we're probably going to be doing it on our own.
Okay.
I think it's highly unlikely that we would... that they would have any openings in their schedule right before Christmas. Which,
I see. Mm-hmm.
I think the ad date for radio is this coming Monday.
I see.
And they're take a look at release dates on albums and singles. They're actually with with the changes at labels, I think it's decreasingly likely that we'll find spots that that Universal will not be releasing something in that
Okay.
format.
And why is that? I'm sorry. What changes are those?
Oh, consolidation.
Okay, but I mean, the impact being what? Just that
Well, that they have a bigger share of
the market.
What is released.
Okay, got it.
You know, as there are smaller, fewer labels,
Okay.
they're going to be putting out a larger percentage of what is put out.
Right. Talk about the Oh Brother release. Now that wasn't. It had some of your artists on it, and you got involved in promotion of that to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a joint rounder release with Mercury,
No.
but so how did your involvement work? What was your role, and how did you break that?
Shortly after they got the record, Mercury came up to Rounder to discuss setting it up, and part of, I think there were a couple of different ways of looking at that. One was that they felt, well, they knew they didn't have the contacts
Okay.
that we do in terms of bluegrass and folk radio.
Okay.
They just didn't have enough, coming out the same way that we don't for country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we don't put out enough releases to have really devoted the time and money to create and nourish those relationships.
Okay.
Secondly, the bluegrass and old-time markets are concerned, if not the P word, about suits.
Okay.
And feeling that that if a major label touches any product, that they will, change the whole industry.
Right. Okay.
They're just not very open. So I think that was also part of it. That it should come from people who already have the relationships and are looked upon in a positive light,
Mm-hmm.
and can make the calls easily. So Brad San Martin, well, after the meeting, Brad San Martin put together the mailing, and he did a lot of phone and email hyping or talking up the product before it was sent out.
Right.
We worked the record out of our offices, mainly Brad, to Roots Radio,
Mm-hmm.
and we also set up giveaways and contests, and we had tremendous support there from Cara Florida and John Grady, who were at Mercury. They were very willing to spare materials and support, and they trusted us fully. I mean, we were a very, very important part of that team.
And I assume you got paid for this in some fashion, right?
Not directly. No. I think there was an assumption that they would work extra hard on our Allison records or anything else that we put out. But
Okay.
I think that at least I can speak for myself in that I felt that, and have felt that, anything that raises the visibility of the music that we deal with at retail, press, radio, and certainly to the public is a positive and something that would have implications for the popularity of the music down the road.
Okay.
So
you didn't even get extra points on Allison's participation or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Brad and JJ worked with Kira, Florida, in planning and launching the party at IBMA.
Mm-hmm.
And we all went to a number of advanced screenings to meet with press and radio and talk it up. We helped arrange to have numbers of artists performing live before the film's opening in different cities.
Mm-hmm.
The presentation at IBMA was set up as a showcase. There were a couple things actually. One, they had a showcase slot. So instead of having an artist getting up and doing something for 20 minutes, performing for 20 minutes, they had clips from the movies and talking about the movie, etc., during that time slot.
Yeah.
It also happened to be the year that IBMA, and in particular the more significant labels, had invited a number of key retailers, including Anderson and Borders and who's your guy down there?
John Coons?
Yeah, Coons
Okay.
was,
Who's Anderson?
Waterloo. So there were a lot of key retailers, and we had set up a meeting of labels to meet with the retailers in terms of trying to jointly come up with something that we could do to raise the visibility of the music and commercial potential as well. And at the meeting, I think most of the discussion was on Oh Brother and what we could do in using Oh Brother as a central piece for having bluegrass promotions in the important accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was January that people decided to make Bluegrass Month in their accounts, and we took that from the accounts that were there and spread it as much as we could to other accounts using Oh Brother as the central piece.
Now, is this all happening before you knew anything of the success that was coming with the record, or was this after it's?
I think that I'm trying to think. I could probably find some old emails, but if not, I believe that Mercury wanted to put 100,000 pieces in the stores.
Okay.
And they weren't able to.
Really? Okay.
I think they ended up getting 75,000 in. My first strong feeling was at that meeting with the accounts.
Mm-hmm.
When they became as excited as they were. And I wrote to IBMA and basically said, what are we going to do? This thing looks like it could really be very, very important and have some serious legs. And there was no response at all.
Right. Uh-huh.
We just didn't get it. And as a result, I think each label and each whatever connected with bluegrass went about doing what they were going to do to take advantage of it in their own ways.
Did you feel early? Did you feel as it started rolling that you were definitely riding the wave as opposed to pushing it along? I mean, it really got out of hand in a good way.
Oh, I think that we were really crucial in setting it up. If you take a look at those, at the sound scans,
mm-hmm.
The early months were quite slow,
mm-hmm.
Until they were respectable, but they were nothing like what it became.
Mm-hmm.
Until the bluegrass promotion kicked in.
Okay.
But I think that that the work that we did, and I didn't mention my work, which was mainly on the internet,
uh-huh.
and that I focused on Bluegrass L and IBM AL, and to a lesser extent the local New England Bluegrass L.
Mm-hmm.
In first talking it up, and then keeping the awareness up, giving sales figures, keeping the lack of radio story going, encouraging people who have had trouble getting their friends to go to a concert,
mm-hmm.
to say, hey, bring them to the film. Maybe we can get them to, to at least hear the music
right
this way. And I would guess that I probably spent close to 2 hours a day either answering personal mails back from people, feeding other information, looking up information, collecting information.
Okay.
But it was, it was almost like a part-time job. Just fueling it and keeping other people, keeping it being discussed day in and day out.
Was it always clear to you that bluegrass was the genre label that you were going to apply to that? Because even among people who liked it, as it got rolling, you'd occasionally hear this grumbling. Well, let's remember, there's not a lick of bluegrass on the record.
There was.
I know that, but
it was a lick. I mean, there was one banjo, and that's the old Stanley Brothers.
Right. Okay.
That was the only cut that had a banjo on it.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, it was a. First of all, I think that that bluegrass is a more organized field. At least, IBMA exists. It was a term that most people had heard, even though they didn't know much about it.
Right.
Yet, it was interesting that Mercury did not promote it as.
How did they promote it?
It was roots.
Roots music.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting. Yeah.
And that I think we co-opted it.
Okay. That's an interesting observation.
And it's, another thing, and I've written about this somewhere, but I don't think I have it handy, is that there existed a very similar opportunity for the community way back with Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
The first one, back
Yeah.
in '72. Okay,
yeah. It was actually grassier. It had similar initial sales.
Right.
Everybody talked about it. Everybody knew about it. But the bluegrass labels, and there was no central organization, and the professionalism and level of promotion and publicity just barely existed at that time.
Okay.
And so, nothing really happened. I don't think there was more than a blip on the screen, and as far as bluegrass,
right,
resulting from that.
I mean, the album made a dent in popular culture. It was out there in Rolling Stone and things like that.
Right, but it didn't have the ripple effect.
Right. Okay. In terms of other releases.
Right.
Right. Okay.
I don't think there were artists that that took advantage of it either.
Well, it's interesting because in another context, I write that you had a you were at the center of a little scene around there, because at about that time you were releasing Tut's album and the first Norman Blake, Pete Kirby's record, Brother Oswald's record, and they were all on that record. They were all on Aeroplane, or at least Blake and Taylor were. And you kind of stood at the epicenter of this little burgeoning hippie, I don't know, old-time bluegrass scene in the early 70s around the time of that, but it didn't really get going.
It didn't get going, and part of the reason was that, we weren't organized, we weren't promotionally oriented. I think, we might have been almost anti-promotionally oriented.
Oh, you got a hate letter from Tut Taylor, which is a wonderful letter. By the way, I'm writing about it. It's not. I don't mean it in a bad way. It's a good. This letter may in fact be. Both you and Bill have talked to me about of an artist who complained to you in the early 70s. It's not enough to release my records. You have to sell my records.
Right.
And I don't know if you're remembering Tut Taylor, but he did write you a record just like that.
Oh.
Write you a letter just like that. And it was around his record and Blake's record. And one of the things he said was, I don't remember his words. I've written. It was essentially, you may be nonprofit, but I'm not.
Right.
So if it wasn't what you were remembering, it's exactly like what you were remembering.
Right.
And talking to me. And
so another eye and ear opener for us was when Sweet Honey and the Rock chose Flying Fish over us because they felt that we were more promotionally oriented than we were.
Right. How did you? Let's step back about a half dozen years from Oh Brother to Allison's breakthrough, the compilation album. Did you market that in essentially the same ways on your own?
I didn't.
The Allison compilation that sold 2 million copies.
Right.
Did you guys market that, and essentially was that kind of like proved to be a dry run for